This is part 16 of my progress report so far, transom and swim ladder. This is my introduction to sailing Wilson on YouTube. I own a 2013 Island Spirit catamaran, 38 foot in length, and I really love my boat. I'm sure you've heard this before, but please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and push on the notification bell. That'd help a lot. By the way, please share my videos with other people you know. I'm currently on the hard stand at Reback Island Shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Reback Island is a resort island just off the main island of Langkawi in Malaysia. Here's a Google Earth image of my boat just beside the blue dot on the hard stand. And here's a photograph of my boat just after I finished putting the copper coat on. I've still got a lot of work to do. After putting on a grey primer, I found some imperfections in the corners and joins, so I ground them out, smoothed them out and sanded them, and sanded some rough spots in preparation for putting on filler to fill up those rough spots. And here I am putting in some filler into the corners using my fingers, because I found that to be much easier for my shaky hands with bare fingers rather than having gloves on, and I did use the spatulas as well. So I prepared the grey primer in the oil grip for the last coat, and I sprayed it on. I wasn't quite happy with some of the spray work, and I did use the roller at times. You know, the hotter the day got, the harder it was to use the spray gun. The gun seems to clog up a little bit more than normal. Probably best to do it in the cool of the morning in the tropics, because by lunchtime it just clogs up so bad. I found that by using 25% of the oil grip reducer, it made the spraying a lot easier. And here's my spray job on the port side. When I did use the roller, I accidentally spilled it out of the tray onto my shoes and ruined a set of shoes in the process. Then I went about sanding off the rough edges, making it as smooth as I could, and preparing it for spraying on the white all grit top coat. I cleaned it off with the airbrush and wiped it down with the dry cloth, and then used some acetone quickly to get rid of any further muck before I put on the top coat. It comes in two parts with a reducer. Again, I had the same problem with spraying on the white top coat, so I used a roller to do the first and second coats with sanding in between the coats, and that seemed to work out just as good as the spray. And the last, you can see it's a little bit rougher than a spray, but it sanded off okay. And then the third coat is I used the spray gun. And here I am doing the port side. You notice all the plastic tape for when I did spray, and then here I am sanding off the rough spots before I went about spraying on the third and final coat of the white top coat. Here is the finished third coat of the white all grip top coat. Then I taped off both transoms and put on two coats of non-slip white paint and here's the finished job. Then it was time to do the swim ladder and handrails, screw them down. I had to bend the angle on the swim ladder where my finger is to make the angle right so that the swim ladder fitted into the new finished transoms. Then I decided to drill in to the new transoms and put in bolts and nuts and secure them with epoxy so that I could screw down the transoms. And here are the little nuts and bolts taped up with plumber's tape so that the epoxy wouldn't cause a problem when I wanted to remove the bolts but leave the nuts behind. Then I drilled out the appropriate bigger holes so I could put epoxy in with the nuts and bolts and secure down the handrails and swim ladder. Here I am using a bit of white paint to mark a spot where I needed to drill a hole for the epoxy and then the nuts and bolts to go into the epoxied hole. Here I am lining the drill up at a 90-degree angle to start the drill process and then drop it down to a vertical hole and drill out a vertical hole in both transoms. Now you'll see again here I am drilling a 90-degree angle and then bringing the drill down so that it's a horizontal hole going in to the transom for the swim ladder. And here are the finished holes drilled and taped up, ready for putting the epoxy in. I prepared slightly thickened epoxy and put it into a syringe and syringed it into each of the holes and then let it dry and sanded the job off flush with the surfaces. And the idea is to drill into that epoxy so that I can place the swim ladder and then drop the nuts and bolts into place with an epoxy fill. Here I am countersinking holes after measuring and fitting the swim ladder to the shape of the transom and trying not to make a mistake. It's not easy when you get uneven surfaces. And you'll see that the back of the swim ladder where the vertical and horizontal angles don't quite match, and that had to be filled with Sikaflex. To test my idea, I epoxied in 4 nuts and the bolt in place on the leading edge of the swim ladder, and you can see the other nuts and bolts laying there. The next day I removed the bolts and took the swim ladder off, checked to make sure that the job was done properly, and put the swim ladder onto the workbench. And you can see from this video that I've put the Sikaflex in place and put on what I believed was enough to seal the job and not have too much overspill. You can see the bolts are in place, well, most of the bolts are in place, ready for dropping down into the holes and screwing them down. I also Sikaflexed into the holes themselves on the horizontal edge of the step, and then using the impact drill and the Allen bit I screwed down the bolts into the nuts that were already epoxied in place inside the transom steps, and made sure that it was nice and tight before I removed what little Sikaflex was spilling out of the side. I rechecked my Sikaflex and tightened the screws down a little bit more on both the swim ladder and both handrails on the starboard and port sides. I had a little bit of trouble with lining up the bolts on the handrails. The angles weren't as easy to get to, but I was generally happy with the job that I'd done.
I never thought it'd be so difficult to get these holes lined up so that they look horizontal and face off. But at least it's on.
The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of part 16 of my progress report on my haul out at Reback Island, doing the transoms and swim ladder.